Yes, yes, yes.
After 2.5.
Yes.
あの戦争をどう思ったか。一旦戦争を取ったああいうもんだよ。今までバーチャルで見た。
We are trying to like film, interview people.
Already here?
Yeah, I can show you the other.
Okay. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Going upstairs now for the session?
これから上に行きますか？セッション出るんですか？
またお話聞くの楽しみにしてます。
Likewise.
Hello, I'm Daryl.
Very nice to see you. Hello.
Partner got COVID, so we couldn't go because.
ごめんなさい、この間ね、NHK でやってた。
May I introduce you? My new colleague.
Campaign gather all of these people that are against nuclear weapons in a joint coalition to make one big push to ban and eliminate them. And that's how I can. The survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, really these people that know more than anyone what nuclear weapons really are and what they do to people. And this place is where they get to be heard.
As we can.
I stand here with pride, and I stand here for our future and the generations to come. I stand here in hope and gratitude for the opportunity to participate.
My name is Karina Lester. I'm a second generation nuclear test survivor. We hope that in this new treaty, governments will at last make reparation for the harm inflicted.
I thank my wonderful team back home. Without you all,
This is the moment. This is where we all need to stop nuclear weapons. Politics and government decision is not just something that happens magically out of our control. We all contribute to creating the context of the political decisions.
I'm the co-founder of ICANN in Austria and one of the organizers of the Nuclear Bank Week here in Vienna. Vienna has always been a very important city for negotiations, especially in the nuclear field. We have the Iran talks taking place in Vienna, the Vienna Summit. I feel that Vienna, also as being headquarters of the United Nations, is playing a crucial role in providing the ground for such talks.
So ICANN was originally launched in Australia, but fun fact, actually the international launch was held here in Vienna in April 2007 at the United Nations. So for ICANN, being here in Vienna now is really like coming home.
The Nuclear Ban Week will be full of very interesting and important meetings. There will be a parliamentarian conference to discuss between parliamentarians.
It's amazing to believe that we are finally here again, finally together again. And we are so pleased to welcome you all here right now in the Aula, but also all people that are joining us right now over our live stream.
Those final ratifications in the middle of a massive global pandemic. The UN was mostly shut down. Donald Trump was still president of the United States. But we did it. The ban entered into force and we immediately started planning for this massive celebration at the first meeting of states parties. And then things, believe it or not, got worse. Russia illegally invaded Ukraine earlier this year and threatened to use nuclear weapons. And our work became more urgent, more needed than ever. Will he do it? People have asked us. There are people like Leslie Kagan, Cora Weiss, many hibakushas and survivors of nuclear tests. They don't wear capes or masks, so the world might not recognize them for what they really are. Heroes. And the world might not know how their activism and how that ordinary people everywhere was just so absolutely extraordinary that it actually saved the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, today should have been a celebration of the enormous achievements of the past few years, the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, at its first meeting of state parties next Tuesday. Instead, we meet at a time of crisis, at a watershed moment. On February the 24th, the unthinkable has happened. War has returned to Europe. Russia has invaded Ukraine. It is trying to redraw borders and does not even recoil from using nuclear blackmail, something we have believed to be a thing of the past. We send a strong signal that the conversation has shifted. The TPNW is the new norm. It gives voice to the majority of states that do not accept the logic of nuclear deterrence. So my appeal to you is simple. Keep up your efforts. We need you, your voices, your campaigns, your pressure. We need this effective and powerful private-public partnership. It was instrumental in banning anti-personnel mines.
The nuclear program would not help with strengthening its sovereignty and independence. Instead, it channeled its energy to attracting foreign direct investment, foreign technology, and getting access to the international community. I'm proud of Kazakhstan's choices, but I'm heartbroken that Kazakhstan will never be able to raise the legacy of the Soviet nuclear tests. Whenever I travel to the areas next to the former Soviet nuclear testing site in Semipalatinsk, I meet the third and the fourth generation of survivors, children who are missing fingers, who suffer from cancer and other diseases. A war in which a nuclear power, Russia, is engaged in nuclear stable red wing is beyond irresponsible. And since the war started, I get questions on a regular basis. What would happen if Russia uses a tactical nuclear weapon on the battlefield, or if a conventional war grows into a nuclear exchange between nuclear powers? And it's almost as though I have a physical reaction that I don't want to answer. It literally makes me sick. And I think the question should be, how did we get here? How in 2022 we're talking about nuclear use? And I just want to leave you with the final message, I guess. I really believe we should all be united in reclaiming our agency, in deciding our fate, and make it impossible for a few who possess nuclear weapons to keep us all hostages. Thank you.
And during the Soviet period, they tried to hide the fact that radiation was making people sick and killed them. And it's only in the 80s when dissent became possible in the Soviet Union, when Mikhail Gorbachev came to power, that there appeared a chance for the Kazakh people to rise up and really rally against nuclear tests. And that's how the world's largest anti-nuclear movement was born, called Nevada Semipalatins. And later on, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Kazakhstan was left with nuclear weapons, material, and weapons infrastructure. And again, it was a very important point in history for Kazakhstan. What would it do with all of that? Would it decide to join a nuclear club? And actually, when I interviewed one of the decision makers and one of the main negotiators from Kazakhstan on the nuclear issues, he said that we did not want to become a Central Asian North Korea. For Kazakhstan, it was really important to enter the world as a newly independent state, as a responsible member of the international community. And even though Kazakhstan did not feel secure at the time, because we have two nuclear neighbors, Russia and China. It's a very difficult geopolitical context, but still Kazakhstan decided that nuclear weapons was not an answer, a nuclear program wasn't an answer. And that was a very big, important decision that is part of Kazakhstan's national identity.
私が記憶している5歳の時の被爆体験についてお話しします。
I would like to share with you the experience I remember of the atomic bombing when I was 5 years old.
私は爆心地から2キロメートルの自宅前路上に母と一緒にいました。
At the time, I was together with my mother in front of our house, 2 kilometers from the hypocenter.
飛行機の音を聞いたその瞬間、ピカドン、光を浴び、飛ばされて気を失いました。
All of a sudden, I heard the buzzing sound of a plane, and I was engulfed in a bright flash. The bang blew me away, and I fell unconscious.
私は顔の左半分、母は顔と胸を焼かれました。爆心地に近づくにつれ、ゴロゴロ転がった死体、水を求める人々が目に入りました。
As we approached the area of Ground Zero, we saw bodies scattered on the streets and people there begging for water.
何もできず、ただ体を固くして通るだけでした。
We could not do anything but just freeze and continue to walk past them.
何もかも初めて見る地獄としか言いようのない光景でした。
This was a scene like nothing I had ever seen before, and the only word I can describe it with is hell.
日本被団協は人間にとって原爆とは何かを調査研究し、原爆は人間として死ぬことも人間らしく生きることも許さない、人間と共存できない非人道的絶対悪の兵器であることを明らかにしました。
Nihon Hidankyo has been conducting surveys and research on what the atomic bomb means to humanity, and this reveals that the atomic bomb is a weapon of inhumanity and absolute evil with which human beings cannot exist. It does not even allow us to die as human beings or to live as human beings.
核兵器禁止条約は被爆者の願いそのものです。
The TPNW itself embodies this very aspiration of we Hibakusha.
心から喜び歓迎します。
We welcome it with joy from the bottom of our hearts.
特に条約6条の核兵器被害者に対する支援をすべての人に安全につながるものです。
In particular, we hope that support for victims of nuclear weapons provided in Article 6 of the treaty will be deepened here, as this will lead to the safety of all people.
締約国会議で話し合われ、深められることを期待しています。
We very much hope that Article 6 will be discussed and further deepened at the meeting of states parties.
600 nouveaux cas de cancer enregistrés, 300 décès de cancer par an. La population totale de la Polynésie, 280 000 habitants. N'est-ce pas alarmant?
As we know, some other data given by our health ministers of Polynesia is that, as you can see, 600 new cancers patients a year, 3 cancers deaths a year, and we know that the population is 280,000 people.
Nuclear weapons, threats, and bombs do worry the civilian population because they may be thrown at our homes, our schools, and our cities. They are a real threat to our future and our natural environment.
The situations of Nagasaki or Hiroshima or the US test site or in Polynesia or even the uranium site in Congo, the situations are generally hidden in normal cases. And scientists, mass media are always talking about, oh, it's okay, it's safe. There's no victim as well. That's a very typical discourse in the public, in the mainstream. How can you and can we start against that kind of containment of information?
The propaganda campaign around this has been so incredibly intense for decades. All governments lie, all governments cover up. I know in my country they didn't do the studies we really needed. I think all we can do is keep telling our stories and get scientists who have the hard data to share it, because there are studies out there. And we need to have those. We need to share them. And we need to let people know what happened to us. Because I can't tell you, even where so many people were affected in my own community, they don't know it. Like the vast majority of victims of nuclear testing will never know they are. So I think we have a responsibility to educate the media, to give all the interviews we can, to talk to filmmakers, because we have to tell this story or we will never ever end the threat.
Of the voices of the survivors of the use and test of nuclear weapons. And the other is the recommendation from the Japanese civil society for the implementation of the Article 6 of the treaty on the victim assistance.
被爆者を絶対作ったらいかんと、私たちと同じような体験を世界の誰にもさせてはいけないというのが私たちの願いの一つです。
We are all here together with this shared will of the Hibakusha to make sure that no one else anywhere in the world should have to experience what we nuclear survivors have. Nobody should have to suffer as we have ever again.
2つ目は、人類を守るためには核兵器をなくすしかないということです。
The only way that we can protect humanity is by eliminating nuclear weapons.
で、3つ目は、同じ過ちを繰り返してはいけない。国に、あるいは原爆を投下したアメリカに、私たちは謝罪と、それからお金を出せとは言ってません。アメリカに対しては自国の核兵器をまずなくしなさい。そして世界の核兵器をなくすための主導的役割を果たしなさいということを求めています。
And the third thing we are calling for is to ensure that the same mistake is never repeated anywhere again in the world. We as Hibakusha are not calling on the United States which dropped the bomb. We are not asking for an apology and we are not asking for money. What we are asking of the United States is to get rid of their own nuclear weapons and then to take leadership of the China all around the world.
それで時間がありませんから、この願いをここまで進めてきたのは被爆者だけではありません。日本国民と世界の市民の皆さんと一緒に手を取って進んできたからここまで到達しているのです。本当にありがとうございました。感謝でいっぱいです。
今回は元帥金の代表団として高校生平和大使と一緒に見に来てるんですけど、実はね、やっぱり若い人がすごく多いっていうのが印象なんですよね。
元帥金の共同議長をしています藤本と申します。今秋葉さんがおっしゃったように若い世代、被爆者の平 平均年齢とかが80を超えたっていうそれもどうこの被爆の実相を若い世代に伝えていくか、そういうことでは今高校生一生懸命頑張っている。
I'm from Britain, and what can the UK do to help survivors from places like Japan?
イギリスに期待すること、被爆者のためにしてほしいことはありますか？イギリス出身の方なので。
Because the UK has technical expertise. They don't
want Israel to just join. We want Israel to put pressure on the rest of the world, on the rest of the 8 nuclear states. It has to be a global push, and this is exactly what we came here to ask you to join us with. Let's have a global push for disarmament.
And Japan and the people of Japan know firsthand what the use of nuclear weapons does, and the impact that to this day is felt by people who lived in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and also from the environmental impact that we have seen from Fukushima. So Japan has, unfortunately, a history of that experience, and an experience that is important to be aired from across the world so that we know the consequences of nuclear war or nuclear disaster. The only way to avoid it is to get rid of it, and that is what we're doing at the Middle East Treaty Organization. As you know, at the basis of your ideology, religion, faith-based way of life, Doku is the ability to have empathy. And empathy ultimately is what binds us in having emotional attachment and conveying what you feel and I feel together. That our suffering is not separated by geography or space. That we are actually united as a human race. And if I suffer, you suffer. And if you suffer, I suffer. So for that to end, we need to come together. May that be in Japan, Russia, South America, or the Middle East. It has to be a united front. That our humanity is what makes us united, not what divides us. Thank you.
How are we going to make this text better, and how we are going to protect the process of bringing in states to discuss a real treaty? And for us, that was groundbreaking for the campaign. At that point, we knew that now we're talking about possibilities and not about the impossible route towards disarmament. Hi, I'm Sharon Dolev. I'm from Israel.
Hi, I'm Ahmad Kiai, and I'm from Iran.
Together, we founded and established the Middle East Treaty Organization, together with friends.
And the aim of this organization is to get rid of weapons of mass destruction from the Middle East.
And the world.
And help us get there. And if we can do it as an Israeli and an Iranian, amongst a lot of friends who are helping us achieve this goal, you can do it anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Would it be rational for the other country to use nuclear weapons back and start nuclear war? Would that happen? Anyone?
We don't know. Again, back to uncertainties of nuclear deterrence. In theory, if you look at the rational actor theory, that is the whole point of nuclear deterrence. You promise to respond with nuclear weapons to a certain kind of attack.
I was speaking gibberish. Interestingly enough, when Putin literally said that Ukraine should not exist, and when he starts talking, comparing himself to the great Russian rulers of the past, everything that I said 6 years ago makes sense.
こんにちは。日本の広島から来ました平和大使の大内由紀子です。同じく高校生平和大使の長崎から来ました大野浦春です。初めての VR 体験だったんですけど、その原爆が投下されたらどんな風な景色が広がるのかということを学んだり、海外の人と初めてコミュニケーションすることで自分の新しい視野が広がったり、広島のことをもっと世界に発信していきたいと思うようになりました。
私たちの活動について話したり、そのいろんな国の方々の活動について教わったり、そして時間がある方は日本から持ってきた折り紙を使って一緒に、鶴を折ったり、日本の千羽鶴を紹介したりという交流を、2日間でたくさん行いました。 ここに来て世界中に同じ目標を持って一緒に活動している人たちがこんなにたくさんいるんだってことにとても感動して、これからは世界中たくさんの人とつながっていって私たち唯一の戦争被爆国である日本の若者たちの思いを発信したり、世界中の人たちと一緒に協力して核兵器廃絶へ向かっていったりということができたらいいなと思います。
核兵器と人間は絶対に共存することはできません。核抑止論、核共有、たくさんの核に関する言葉もありますが、核を正当化せずに私たちは核兵器廃絶に向かって、そして世界の皆さんと一緒に核兵器廃絶に向かって行動できればと思っています。
ここ数日の活動で特に思ったことは、その核兵器廃絶を目標にしていてもいろいろな、視点から見た核兵器の話を聞きました。それを踏まえて私たちもグローバルな視点を持っていろいろな、視点からこの問題について考えていくことがとても重要だなと思ったので、これからあと2日ほど、本日含めて2日ほど残っているので、自分たちなりに一生懸命勉強してもっと発信していけるようになりたいと思います。
Hello, my name is Fred Galluccio. I'm a physician and surgeon and a professor at the University of California. I don't represent the University of California. I represent myself and also IPPNW. I have in that process gone and spoken with the then Soviet Union 3 times, and also have been fortunate enough to go to China speaking, trying to stop nuclear weapons. And during the year IPPNW was given the Nobel Peace Prize, we arrived in Hiroshima that same week, and it was quite an experience. That my own country, I'm from the United States, opted to start multiple years ago escalating our nuclear weapons again. And now here we are, sadly, when we have the Putin and the country he commands attacking another country to try to re-grasp that land and power with the threat of nuclear weapons again, which has affected this conference, which initially was supposed to be a celebration, as I understand, of what we have done. And now we are here once again trying to prevent the escalation in the use of nuclear weapons, which would be a devastation to the world, as we all know. I met my wife protesting nuclear weapons, who in 1992 at the nuclear test site in the United States. She was the founder of the peace office in Salzburg, Austria, and it was on a peace walk across the United States 500 years from the beginning of our country, bringing peace rather than oppression. And she had felt that if she was in the United States, she'd go to the nuclear test site where we met, or if she was in Europe, she would go to the nuclear test site in Russia. And so we met at the nuclear test site which is just outside of Las Vegas, and we're both faith-based people, and we both went forward with that campaign. And unfortunately she's passed, but I brought my 2 children with me, adult children, who have also followed in my footsteps. One is starting medical school now, and the other one is a nurse, becoming a nurse practitioner, and they also are going to continue in her name as well, campaigning to try to be that stone that's dropped in the water, ripples out with the effect across the world that we want to have to try to stop nuclear weapons. When I started, I was 29 or 30, and now I'm quite older. And to meet all the much younger people who are the age I was when I started, and this really heartens me, because sometimes I've felt like the youngers are not so interested, but somehow we're having this reactivation once again. And it's just so hard to me to meet people from around the world again, stepping up, speaking, just like when I went to the Soviet Union, even in the midst of the oppression of the Soviet Union, in the midst of the oppression of other places, including the United States, people worked with people to escalate peace, to bring about disarmament, and I think we can still do that. We should never give up hope. We have to walk forward.
Our country should feel proud that a stance like prohibiting nuclear weapons, like no one in the world wants a nuclear weapon to land on them. So I mean, this is amazing, and Australia should be proud that this is where it came from, and they should be supporting it 100%.
Absolutely. What are the risks with so many nuclear weapons still in the world? You know, we know, and we all know, that there are 9 nations across this globe who still play and spend quite large amounts of money into developing these nuclear weapons. It needs to work through. We encourage the Australian government to invite us survivors of these tests that happen in our own country to sit around and be part of the solution as well.
Our member churches have been at the forefront of echoing and amplifying the call of nuclear disarmament. Nuclear testing has been a stain on a colonial history for our member churches in the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Fiji, and Maui. A history of exploitation and willing negligence on the part of France, Britain, and the United States, of the cries of Pacific victims and survivors, a cry which we bring to the MSP after almost 5 decades of injustice and inaction.
I was in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 2014, and that, of course, is something that leaves an extremely profound impact. So that history, working on other issues, looking for ways to push for progress, and of course, understanding through being there, being in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what these weapons really do. Just had a big impact on me, and then of course it's the belief that change is possible. I think that's also very important, something that drives me and many other people specifically here in the room.